5-minute call, Denise Rush.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a budget that hasn't addressed any of New Zealand's fundamental problems. It's a start, but it won't lift enough kids out of poverty. It won't help address the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And it certainly doesn't address the fundamental issue of our time, which is climate change. It's a political budget that has made or continues to make the thousands of cuts that has happened under this government. From the medical students who won't become doctors because of the changes to the FTEs, to the single mum who can't upskill and move up due to the cutting of the retraining grant. This government has ignored people who are marginalised. When and where it has paid attention, it's paid attention due to the public outcry and attention from ordinary New Zealanders, and that includes things like the 0-hour contracts to getting child poverty into the budget at all this time. And credit where credit's due, but I want a government that cares about issues not because it's popular and not because of the polls, but because it genuinely cares about those who are marginalised. And for a start, one of those marginalised groups are refugees. And this budget will make life for refugees even tougher than it is. The $1.5 million cut in funding for essential refugee and protection services has the potential to send an already vulnerable group overseas. It will strand them. Refugees who live in risk of their lives in hotspots, and they stand to stay stranded in those areas because of the bottleneck of the unheard cases that are happening. We've been spending, or we're going to spend, $24.4 million over the next 2 years sending New Zealanders to support the Iraqi army. But for a fraction of that, we could be taking concrete steps to protect vulnerable refugees from human rights abuses in some of the places that they're caught in. And we think refugees need to be resettled as soon as possible so they can integrate and get on with their lives. It will make a huge difference for the lives of so many people. And what about migrant workers in New Zealand? Another marginalised group. How do they fare under this budget? The government announced a package of $33 million for labour inspectors, but in the information it was $33 million on immigration actually, but that money is going to be spent on border control, not necessarily on seeing to the needs of migrant workers. And recent high profiles have shown that there is a need for better education and information for employers about minimum standards, but also for migrant workers so that they know their rights. Essentially, we also need strong compliance to ensure migrant workers are not exploited. Now, sir, I recognise that the government has announced a funding increase for labour inspectors, in fact 6 new labour inspectors for Auckland, and that is to be applauded. However, we lag behind in international standards the ratios of workers to compliance officers. In New Zealand, it's around about 1 inspector for 14,162 workers, and that's about double what happens in Australia. With the deregulated labour market that we have, and where labour rights worker rights have basically been steadily eroded under this government, it's essential that we have some kind of compliance for workers, and particularly vulnerable workers like migrant workers. Seasonal workers, for example, are also at risk of exploitation, and I note that we've only got 5 labour inspectors who are specialists in this area for the recognised seasonal workers scheme, sir. So this budget is Peter robbing Paul. Peter being robbed to pay Paul. There is a reduced allocation for WorkSafe New Zealand. There was going to be a promised increase in health and safety inspectors when WorkSafe New Zealand was set up in 2012, 37 million over 4 years, but this budget says there'll be a reduction. And we still haven't recovered the number of health and safety inspectors we had before 2012, sir. And we need that compliance to occur if we want people to come home safe and unharmed for their jobs. So this budget leaves a lot of people behind. It makes it harder for families to get ahead, and we certainly could be doing a lot better.
I call the Honourable Paula Bennett.
Speaker, it is with absolute pleasure that I stand and actually get to put on record just how proud I am